The Isle of Man's Chief Minister has told Channel 4 News he holds the British government responsible for the financial problems on the island. He said the decision to put Kaupthing, Singer and Friedlander into administration in the UK caused the parent bank in Iceland to collapse and the Isle of Man subsidiary to go into temporary liquidation. The government hasn't promised to reimburse thousands of Britons who deposited £840 million in the Isle of Man, and tomorrow a court on the island will decide if the bank should be wound down, threatening people's savings. Nick Martin reports now from the Isle of Man.
In extraordinary times, with financial markets ceasing to work, the government cannot just leave people on their own to be buffeted about. For savers, for small businesses and for homeowners, we must, in an uncertain and unstable world, be the rock of stability upon which British people can depend.
The Prime Minister's reassuring words didn't quite reach the Isle of Man. The island is now trapped in the middle of a crisis between the UK and Iceland, one which could potentially ruin its reputation as safe, reliable, a rock-solid financial institution. The depositors who banked with Kaupthing, Singer and Friedlander in the Isle of Man will hear tomorrow if they stand to lose their money when a court decides whether the bank should be wound up. Many are British citizens. Some are living or working abroad or moving back to the UK to live. The law says they have to bank offshore. The failure of Kaupthing Isle of Man was in the main a side effect of the decision to put the bank into administration in the UK, which caused its parent bank in Iceland to collapse and in turn the Isle of Man subsidiary to go into temporary liquidation. Channel 4 News understands that the island's financial regulator is now investigating whether £550 million of Kaupthing Isle of Man deposits were transferred to the UK before the bank went into liquidation. The Treasury is still insisting that whatever happens on these shores should be resolved here, but the Isle of Man government is now tentatively pressing its counterparts in London to take responsibility for the problems that Kaupthing Isle of Man customers are now facing. And their key argument in this is that if the UK government had never stepped in and frozen those assets, none of this would ever have happened. For the first time, the island's Chief Minister has told Channel 4 News that he believes the UK government is responsible for the bank's failure.
The United Kingdom government took actions they thought was appropriate, and the knock-on effect of that is that it froze assets that were related to a bank in the Isle of Man. But I mean, that's a decision they made for reasons of their own. They have a responsibility to their British taxpayers, but we also believe they have a responsibility to the depositors of the bank within the Isle of Man, and we fully support the depositors in trying to get their resources back.
The Isle of Man government says it will secure deposits up to £50,000, but the untested system could take decades to pay out. The island now plans to use £150 million of taxpayers' money to part compensate Kaupthing Isle of Man savers.
Are you giving them an assurance that there will be swift payment?
Well, we can't give that assurance. What we can give is an assurance that we have a depositors' compensation scheme which will compensate them for their loss.
The demise of Kaupthing in the Isle of Man was sudden and unexpected according to those on the inside. We've spoken to a current employee who says the bank's fortunes literally changed overnight. He doesn't want to be identified and we've agreed to change his voice.
This had just come out like a bolt from the blue. We had absolutely no idea of what was going on. We had that many phone calls that the phone system just went into meltdown. We just could not physically answer the phones. Couple that with the fact that we genuinely did not know what was happening. It's in my opinion that that was a direct result of the UK freezing the accounts of all Icelandic banks in the UK, which then had a knock-on effect to us here in the Isle of Man.
In the foyer of the Sefton Hotel in Douglas, the capital of the Isle of Man, two men are fighting for their money, and like thousands of others around the world, they want the UK government to help them.
They have to come to terms with the fact that there are thousands of people in distress and they have our money. They have to come forward. The British government has got to come out for a start and say that our money is protected, our money will be returned 100%.
In 1992, I was caught by the credit crunch then when interest rates went through the sky, and I lost my house, And in fact, I vowed at that time never to be a big borrower again. And since that time, I've been a saver. So, you know, I don't have a big house, I don't have a big mortgage. And my money was in the bank. I felt quite smug. You know, I thought I was doing the right thing, what the government wanted, to be a saver rather than a borrower.
You were one of Gordon Brown's prudent savers.
I thought so, yeah. But, you know, now it's looking that wasn't quite so prudent.
The Treasury says that the problem with Icelandic banks didn't originate in the UK, but within the Icelandic banking system. It added,
"While we understand many people have been affected by the failure of Icelandic banks, oversight of Kaupthing's Isle of Man subsidiary is the responsibility of the Isle of Man's regulator. As such, it was their responsibility to assess how the failure of the parent company in Iceland would impact on the Isle of Man subsidiary and take the appropriate action. However, ultimately this was a failure that started in Iceland, and ultimate responsibility for banks in Iceland rests with the Icelandic authorities."